I never thought a Tuesday evening could change the entire trajectory of my life. It was one of those days that started bad and just kept getting worse. Deadlines missed, clients complaining, and a boss who couldn't stop hovering. The sun had just begun to set as I finally made it out of the office and into the familiar chaos of Los Angeles traffic. All I wanted was to get home, throw off my shoes and not talk to another human being until morning. But the freeway had other plans. I was sitting at a red light on Melrose, both hands on the steering wheel, listening to some podcast about productivity or some nonsense I had no intention of applying to my life. Then, in one surreal blink, my world shattered. A black Mercedes shot through the intersection, tires screeching, and slammed into the passenger side of my Toyota like a missile. Glass exploded. My body jerked sideways. There was a metallic crunch, then silence, followed by the sharp ring of pain blooming through my ribs and shoulder. People always say accidents happen in slow motion. That's a lie. It was fast, violent and terrifyingly quiet afterward. When I came to, I was lying in a hospital bed. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A nurse hovered nearby, clipboard in hand. I couldn't move my right arm without searing pain, and my legs felt like they'd been slammed by a train. I tried to ask what happened, but my throat felt like sandpaper. The nurse's face didn't soften when I spoke. If anything, she looked disappointed. "You're awake," she said. "The police want to talk to you." That's when I knew something was wrong. Two uniformed officers walked in, followed by a third man in a suit who introduced himself as Detective Ross. His voice was calm, but there was something sharp underneath. "We have you recorded running a red light and striking another vehicle. Witnesses say you appeared to be under the influence. We'll be conducting a blood test." My heart stopped. I tried to argue, to explain, but my words came out slurred. I wasn't drunk. I hadn't even had a drink in over a week. I was the one who was hit, but they weren't listening. That night, alone and barely able to breathe, I watched the local news play a blurry video clip of a black Mercedes, the black Mercedes, pulling into a private driveway past a velvet rope. People in tuxedos and gowns were laughing, holding glasses of champagne. The camera zoomed in on the license plate. It matched the one that hit me, but the news didn't mention any crash. It said the car belonged to Lucas Hartman, a known associate of billionaire William DeWitt. They were attending a benefit gala in the hills. No one seemed to care what happened after he left. I paused the video, heart racing, and studied the footage. A list of guests flashed across the screen, a montage for the audience to marvel at the exclusivity. I scanned the names. No Jackson Rivera. I wasn't on that list. But one name caught my eye and stopped me cold. Clara Mendoza, my future lawyer. Somehow she was invited, and I had never met her. That realization sent a chill down my spine. Who was this woman? Why was her name on a guest list filled with politicians, celebrities, and moguls? Before we dive deeper into this roller coaster, don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable real-life twists. My injuries were bad enough, but the legal storm that followed was worse. I was charged with reckless driving and leaving the scene, even though I was the one who had been hit. My car was totaled. My name was smeared in the press. I lost my job within the week. My life unraveled like a cheap sweater. Friends stopped calling. My landlord gave me a warning notice because I missed rent. I couldn't sleep without waking up in cold sweats, the sound of glass still echoing in my head. I needed help, desperately. My court-appointed attorney barely looked at me. She handed me a plea deal, 6 months probation and a mandatory driving course, plus a fine I couldn't afford. "That's the best offer you're gonna get," she said, already standing to leave. I stared at the paper in silence. I didn't sign. That night, alone in the hospital room, the door creaked open. A woman in her 30s stepped inside, dressed in a charcoal grey suit, her hair pulled into a sleek bun. She looked sharp, calculated, like someone who'd won wars behind a desk. "Jackson Rivera?" she asked. I nodded. "My name is Clara Mendoza," she said. "I think someone just tried to bury you alive. But I've already started digging." Clara Mendoza had the kind of presence that didn't just enter a room, it took control of it. Even sitting in a hospital gown, bruised and weak, I could feel the gravity shift when she walked in. She didn't offer a handshake. She offered a lifeline. "I've seen the footage," she said, her tone clipped but deliberate. "You weren't driving recklessly. You were hit. And whoever did it thinks they're untouchable." I didn't know how she found me, I didn't ask. All I knew was that she seemed to know more about what happened to me than I did. She pulled a manila folder from her briefcase and laid it on the tray across my bed. Inside were printed screenshots from the gala video, traffic reports, even a rough timeline with scribbled notes in red ink. She had mapped out the movements of the Mercedes and cross-referenced them with traffic light data. It was meticulous and terrifying. "You're being set up," Clara said, "and it's not just some accident cover-up. Someone wants you quiet, Jackson." She called me by my first name like we were old colleagues, as if we shared a history I didn't remember. When I asked why she was helping me, she smiled faintly. "I owe a debt," she said. "Let's just say I don't like watching innocent people go down. Not anymore." I'd heard of Clara Mendoza before. You couldn't live in LA and not know the name. She was the woman who got a wrongly accused gang member released after 10 years in prison, the lawyer who destroyed a corrupt judge's career in open court. A genius in litigation, and a nightmare for the elite who underestimated her. She didn't work cheap, she didn't work for free. And yet, here she was. The next morning, Clara returned with paperwork, formal representation. I signed without hesitation. Within the hour, she had already filed a motion to suppress the blood test results and was demanding access to traffic camera footage the police hadn't released. She worked like a machine, barely pausing to breathe. While she fought the legal side, I was still trying to process what was happening. Every move I made felt like walking through a fog of disbelief. My entire life had shifted from mundane normalcy to a courtroom horror show in less than a week. And somehow this woman who barely knew me seemed more invested in my freedom than anyone else in my life. She explained the charges I faced with brutal honesty. Reckless endangerment, leaving the scene, property damage. Combined, they could land me in prison for up to 3 years. And the prosecution wasn't backing down. They'd already painted me in the press as a reckless young man with a chip on his shoulder. "Public opinion matters," Clara said. "It influences jurors even before trial, and they're counting on that." I asked her who they were. She didn't answer directly, but the look in her eyes said enough. Whoever was behind this wasn't just powerful, they were protected. That night, Clara called me from a private number. Her voice was calm, but urgent. "Someone tried to access your medical records today," she said. "Not the hospital. Someone from the outside." My chest tightened. "Why?" "They're looking for leverage," she said, "to control the narrative. We need to move fast." She arranged for me to be transferred to a private recovery center, secure, quiet, monitored. I didn't argue. At this point, I trusted her more than I trusted my own instincts. During my stay there, she came often. Sometimes she talked about the case. Other times she just sat silently, flipping through documents. One day, while reviewing an evidence list, she stopped abruptly. "Tell me about the night of the crash," she said. "Everything, even what you think, doesn't matter." I went over it again, every second I could remember. The red light, the sound of tires, the shape of the car, the faint smell of alcohol. Then I paused. "There was music," I said slowly. "Loud music, not from my car." She looked up. "What kind?" I shook my head. "Electronic. Like from a club or something. And I think someone was laughing right before the hit." Clara scribbled something in her notebook. "That helps." "How?" She closed the folder and stood. "Because that means it wasn't just a hit and run. It was a party on wheels. And someone's trying really hard to hide who was inside that car." The way she spoke sent a cold wave down my spine. I asked her again, "Why me? Why would anyone go to such lengths to frame someone like me?" Clara studied me for a moment. Then she said, "Because you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and because people like them don't believe anyone will fight back." Then she smiled, not warmly, but with razor-sharp certainty. But they didn't count on me. 3 days after Clara took my case, She told me to put on a black suit and keep my mouth shut. I didn't ask questions. At that point, I trusted her instincts more than I trusted my own memories. She handed me a laminated ID with a fake name, Julian Chase, and introduced me as her assistant. The name felt foreign in my mouth, but I repeated it until it became second nature. That night, we pulled up to the mansion in Bel Air. The driveway stretched like a red carpet toward a palace carved into the hillside. Security guards in tuxedos scanned IDs with tablets. Cameras rotated on tall marble columns. Clara barely glanced at them as we walked through, her confidence slicing through the air like a blade. The velvet rope parted without question. Inside, the scene was surreal. Crystal chandeliers bathed the marble floors in gold. Strings of classical music floated through the air, underscored by the quiet murmur of calculated laughter. Men in tailored suits stood beside women in dresses that shimmered like diamonds. Waiters passed trays of champagne like currency. I didn't belong. Not by a mile. Clara did. She moved with ease, shaking hands, making brief eye contact, her tone shifting with each person she greeted. She didn't need introductions, people knew her. They smiled like they were afraid not to. I stayed a step behind her, quiet, observing. Then she leaned close. "You see that man by the koi pond?" she whispered. "Grey hair, pink tie?" I nodded. "That's Malcolm Grant. Owns the PR firm that handled the gala. He's been on DeWitt's payroll for years. You're about to introduce yourself." My stomach twisted. "And say what?" "Ask him about the car," she said. "Say you're researching footage discrepancies for security reasons. Won't he—" "Smile and improvise," she said. "Trust your own eyes." I approached him, my heart hammering. "Mr. Grant," I said, forcing confidence. He turned, assessing me. "Yes?" "I'm with Mendoza Legal," I lied. "We're reviewing visual anomalies from last weekend's event. Would you have a moment to clarify a few things?" He hesitated, glancing around, then gave a short nod. Briefly. As he spoke, I kept my eyes on his. He dodged direct questions about entry logs, claimed the event was handled by external contractors. When I asked if there was a backup of guest arrival footage, he shifted. "All digital records were sent to legal," he said flatly. "Anything else is confidential." He walked off before I could press further. Clara rejoined me, calm as ever. "He's hiding something," I said. "I know," she replied. "We're not here for answers. We're here for patterns." We made our way through the ballroom. I noticed the security guards again, not just at the entrance, but stationed by every exit. Their earpieces buzzed softly. They weren't watching the guests, they were watching us. Clara leaned toward me. "Time to go." "But we haven't—" "They know you don't belong." As we turned, someone called her name. A tall man in a cream jacket approached. Blonde hair, perfect teeth, charming in a way that made my skin crawl. "Clara Mendoza," he said with an easy smile. "Didn't expect to see you here." Clara's lips curled into something polite but distant. "William." My chest tightened. William DeWitt. I froze, unsure whether to look away or stare him down. "New intern?" he asked, nodding toward me. "Observing," Clara said. DeWitt chuckled. "Careful what you let him observe. Not everyone in this room plays fair." She didn't blink. I never expect them to. They held each other's gaze like a standoff. Then DeWitt stepped aside. "Enjoy the party." Clara took my arm and guided me to the hallway near the kitchens. Her jaw was tight. "We need to leave now." We moved quickly, passing through a narrow staff corridor that led to a side exit. A security guard blocked the door. Clara didn't stop. "I represent 3 of your employer's partners," she said coldly. "If you don't want me making calls, step aside." The man flinched, stepped back. We exited into the cool night, walking fast until we reached the car. Inside, silence reigned for several minutes. "You saw him," she said finally. "I did," I replied. "And now you understand." I nodded. Clara pulled out her phone and opened a folder. She showed me a still image from earlier security footage. Lucas Hartman getting out of the black Mercedes. Same suit, same hair, same smirk. "He was here," she said, hours after the crash. Why isn't anyone investigating? Because no one's willing to say his name or DeWitt's. I looked at her. But you are. She met my eyes, deadly calm. I don't need permission. Back at Clara's office, the walls were lined with whiteboards, maps and strings, connecting names, events and timelines like some kind of organized madness. It was the mind of someone who didn't just study a case, she dissected it. This isn't about proving your innocence anymore, she said, pinning another photo to the board. It's about exposing why they want you guilty. The guest list from the gala was our starting point. Clara had managed to get the full digital roster, every name, timestamp and ID number logged by the entry system. As we compared it with public footage, something strange emerged. Some names appeared on paper but never on camera. Others appeared in photos but weren't on any official list. And then there was Lucas Hartman. There's no log of him entering, Clara said, which means someone either added his name after the fact or scrubbed it before the list went public. Why erase him? I asked. Because if he was there officially, questions would follow, she said. But if he wasn't, then he was there under someone else's protection. That's more dangerous. We needed the surveillance footage from inside the estate, but the owners weren't cooperating, so Clara called in a favor, someone she described only as an old debt repaid. A day later, we met a man named Leon in the back room of a closed music shop in East Hollywood. He was short, built like a wrestler, with fingers that moved across his laptop like they were dancing. Your girl said you needed a ghost's footprints, he muttered, connecting an encrypted drive. I pulled the raw camera logs from the back server. They didn't scrub it all. We watched in silence as he loaded the files. Time-stamped footage showed guests arriving, talking, dancing. At 10:43 p.m., a shadow passed near the south corridor, a man ducking out of view. Leon zoomed in, sharpened the frame. Lucas Hartman, jacket removed, holding a drink, laughing with someone just off frame. Gotcha, Clara said. Leon leaned back. You didn't get nothing yet. That's not evidence, it's suggestion. But it's enough to connect timelines, Clara replied, especially if we find who he was with. We played frame by frame until the camera caught a woman brushing past him. Her face turned slightly, familiar. It was the assistant to the city's deputy district attorney. My mouth went dry. She works for the guy prosecuting me. Which means the DA's office has a direct link to the man who hit you, Clara said, and they never disclosed it. The implications sank in. This wasn't just corruption, it was collusion. I wanted to shout, to tell the world what we'd found, but Clara stopped me. Timing is everything, she said. If we show our hand too early, they'll bury the rest. We need to move carefully. Over the next few days, Clara assembled a detailed timeline, matching video evidence with text messages, press coverage, and security logs. She was building a case not just in court, but in the court of public opinion, but I couldn't sit still. My life had become a waiting room of rage and helplessness. I was tired of being the guy everyone moved around like a pawn. What can I do? I asked her one night. Clara hesitated, then slid a tablet across the table. Study this. Every case DeWitt's name appears in, every judge, every firm, every anonymous donation he's made in the last 5 years. It was a mountain, but I climbed it. Hours turned into days. I began to see patterns, names that repeated, motions that were never granted, cases that vanished. The deeper I went, the more I understood why Clara had taken me on. This wasn't just about me. This was about a system rigged so well it had stopped pretending to be fair. And the more I read, the more I changed. I started asking sharper questions. I challenged Clara's theories, offered new angles. She didn't just allow it, she welcomed it. You're not just a victim anymore, she said. You're part of the counterattack. One evening, while reviewing the guest list again, I found something odd. An edit log buried in the metadata. Someone had added Clara's name to the list after the event ended. I showed her. She stared at the screen, silent. That's not possible, she said. Then someone wanted you there, or wanted people to think you were. A silence fell between us. For the first time, I saw something close to fear in her eyes. "They're watching us too," she whispered. The realization was a gut punch. We weren't just investigating the system, we were inside it, trapped in its mechanisms, monitored, maybe even manipulated. Still, she squared her shoulders. "Good," she said finally. "Let them watch. We're not done yet." We didn't have time for fear, not anymore. The data trail we'd uncovered pointed straight to Lucas Hartman, but no legal thread could hold him, unless we got him talking. Clara's plan wasn't just bold, it was surgical. "We're going to bait him," she said. "But he needs to think he's the one with leverage." "How?" I asked. "We make it look like someone's blackmailing him. Someone with the footage. Someone who wants a payoff." We crafted the illusion together. A burner phone, an anonymous message. A single frame of the gala video with Lucas and the deputy DA's assistant. Just enough to suggest danger, just enough to provoke panic. The message was simple. "We have the footage, we know what you did, meet or we go public." Within hours, Lucas responded. The arrogance slipped. He agreed to meet at an abandoned restaurant in Culver City, midnight, alone. Clara set the terms. Hidden mics, 2 exits, security watching from a distance. I asked her what the plan was if he turned violent. "He won't," she said. "Because tonight, he's more afraid than you've ever been." That was the part that unsettled me. I had lived in fear for weeks. If Lucas was feeling that same tightness in his chest, we were closer than we thought. At midnight, the building echoed with silence. Lucas showed up in a leather jacket, trying to look calm, but his eyes betrayed him. They darted, scanned. He held his phone in one hand, the other deep in his pocket. Clara stepped out from the shadows. "Relax, Lucas," she said. "We're not here for money." His jaw clenched. "Then what the hell is this?" "The truth." She dropped a folder on the table. Inside, photos, logs, guest list metadata, all of it. Evidence that placed him at the scene. After the crash, inside DeWitt's world, protected. Lucas barely glanced at it. "I was told to keep my mouth shut," he muttered. "Told this would go away." "By whom?" He hesitated. Clara leaned in. "If you don't talk now, they'll bury you, just like they tried to bury Jackson. Except you won't walk away with sympathy." "You think I had a choice?" he snapped. "You think I wanted to drive that car? I was drunk." DeWitt handed me the keys and said, "Drive slow." That's it, that's all I remember. He was unraveling. Clara kept her voice steady. "And after the crash?" "I ran. I called him. He said don't worry, that he'd take care of it, that the cameras would show what he wanted them to." "And the DA?" Lucas laughed bitterly. "Everyone gets paid eventually." Clara pressed the recorder in her pocket. "Say that again." Lucas froze, realized, too late. "You tricked me," he whispered. "No," Clara said. "You finally told the truth." But before we could move, Lucas grabbed the folder and bolted through the back exit. Clara didn't chase him. She didn't have to. We had the audio, we had everything, until 2 hours later. At 3:17 a.m., Clara's phone rang. Her face went pale. She hung up without a word and walked to her bedroom. When she returned, she held a shattered flash drive. "They broke in," she said. "Someone was in my apartment, took my backup files, left this on my desk." I looked at the device. Cracked down the center, a message scrawled on a sticky note. "Stop chasing ghosts." "They know we met with Lucas," I said. Clara nodded. "And they want us to think they're always one step ahead." "Are they?" She didn't answer. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts raced with images of Lucas disappearing, of masked men breaking in, of Clara alone against forces I couldn't see. It wasn't just about a crash anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about power, who had it and who dared to challenge it. By morning, Clara was already at work again, unfazed, focused. She poured coffee like it was armor. "We still have the audio," I said. She shook her head. "Not enough. It'll be dismissed without corroboration. Lucas needs to testify." "He won't." "Not yet." She turned her laptop toward me. A map, dots, lines, connections. "We find leverage, not just on Lucas, on everyone in DeWitt's inner circle. Every favor, every handshake, every lie." I leaned in. For the first time, not as a client, but as an equal. "We bring the whole thing down," I said. Clara looked at me. Yes, but we start with one crack. And that crack had just begun to spread. The courthouse smelled like cold marble and nerves. It had been 3 weeks since the night Lucas spilled everything and vanished. 3 weeks of silence from his end, 3 weeks of threats, and now 3 weeks of mounting pressure to take my case to trial, without our key witness. As Clara and I entered the courtroom, I noticed the change. The way the bailiff wouldn't meet our eyes. The way the district attorney, Mark Paxton, smirked like he'd already won. He knew Lucas was gone. And without him, we were left with pieces. Fragments. A story that in a courtroom could be dismissed as paranoia or fiction. The gallery was half full. Reporters, legal aides, a few curious faces. But what struck me most was the silence. Heavy, expectant, deliberate. Judge Hill entered. Neutral expression. No-nonsense voice. People versus Jackson Rivera. Pre-trial motions, she announced. Clara rose, professional and precise. She motioned to exclude the prosecution's video evidence, arguing chain of custody violations and tampering. She moved to unseal private communications between Paxton's office and the gala organizers, claiming conflict of interest. Paxton objected to everything with a casual arrogance. He wasn't trying to argue, he was trying to exhaust her, and it was working. By noon, Judge Hill ruled against most of Clara's motions. No camera footage dismissed, no records opened. She allowed the toxicology report, even though the original blood sample had been lost in police custody. It felt like the system was folding inward, closing its walls. Clara remained poised, but I could see it in her grip on the table, white-knuckled and trembling. She was used to fighting, not watching the ground sink beneath her feet. When we left the courtroom for recess, she didn't speak for several minutes. Then finally, "They're not just playing the game, they own the board." I nodded. "So what now?" "We stall," she said. "We ask for continuance. We make noise. We buy time." "Time for what?" Her voice dropped. "For something to crack." Back at her office, the air was different, no longer tense but hollow. The recordings from Lucas were locked in a vault. Our files were backed up in 4 separate places, but none of that mattered without a living witness to verify them. The press was circling like vultures. Someone had leaked parts of the gala guest list. Articles painted me as a disgruntled nobody targeting a beloved businessman. Clara was accused of overreaching, of politicizing a simple DUI case. At night, I lay awake wondering if I'd made a mistake by fighting. Maybe I should have taken the plea. 6 months probation would be over by now. I'd be working, rebuilding, forgotten, but the thought made me sick. Accepting guilt for something I didn't do wasn't survival. It was surrender, and I wasn't ready to die quietly. The next morning, the news hit. A judge in a different district had dismissed another of Clara's cases due to improper investigative conduct. No explanation, just a cold final decision, a message. Clara stared at the screen. "They're targeting my entire docket. How do we stop them?" She didn't answer. That night I heard her pacing the hallway, the sound of drawers opening, folders rustling, papers being rearranged. I got out of bed and found her standing over the kitchen table, covered in files. She looked up, eyes red, jaw clenched. "I never wanted you to get pulled this deep," she said. "I thought I could keep you clear of the worst of it, but they're going to use you as an example." "Then let them," I said, "but we don't back down." She exhaled slowly. "You don't understand what they're capable of." "I'm beginning to." She paused, then pushed a document toward me. It was a sworn affidavit, my name at the top, a new statement. "You can go public," she said. "Now." "Say you were pressured. Say the system failed you. Paint yourself as a victim. We can spin it. You won't win, but they'll let you walk." Quietly. I read the page, then looked up at her. "Would you take it?" "No," she said. "Then neither will I." The next day, Clara returned to court and requested a continuance, citing new evidence and witness interference. Paxton objected immediately, claiming it was a delay tactic. Judge Hill looked at Clara for a long moment, then said, 2 weeks, no more." Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Clara ignored them. I stopped for 1 second, looked at the crowd, then turned back to her. Let's make every second count. That night something changed in Clara, not in her methods, but in her fire. She stopped playing defense. She stopped worrying about court procedure and started hunting. I'm done waiting for someone to save us, she said. It's our turn to shake the cage. I never expected a video to change the course of my life, but when the walls are closing in, sometimes the only weapon you have left is your voice. Clara helped me write it. No legal jargon, no fear-driven edits. Just the truth, raw, unfiltered, and impossible to ignore. We recorded in her office late at night with the blinds drawn. I sat in front of the camera, stared into the lens, and told the world exactly what had happened. I was in an accident. I was hit. I wasn't drunk. I didn't flee. But somehow I'm the one facing prison. I named Lucas Hartman. I named the gala. I mentioned William DeWitt, not as an accuser, but as a question. Why is the man tied to the driver who hit me the same man tied to the people prosecuting me? Then I said something Clara hadn't scripted. If they can do this to me, they can do it to anyone. By morning, the video had over 2 million views. Clara's phone lit up with calls. Journalists, whistleblowers, activists. My inbox exploded. Suddenly, I wasn't just a defendant. I was a story, a symbol. News anchors debated my case on live television. Hashtags trended. Protesters stood outside the courthouse with signs that read, "Justice for Jackson" and "Who owns the truth?" For the first time since the crash, I felt like I wasn't alone, but the backlash came just as fast. That afternoon, William DeWitt's attorneys filed a defamation lawsuit against me. A full-on legal strike, designed not just to silence, but to punish. Clara was ready. "This is exactly what we needed," she said, eyes gleaming. "Now we get him under oath." The strategy was brilliant. By turning the defamation suit into a discovery battlefield, Clara gained access to documents, call logs, schedules, things we'd never be allowed to request in a criminal trial. DeWitt's team fought back, of course. They delayed, denied, tried to bury us in paperwork. But Clara moved like lightning. She found contradictions, gaps, and signatures that didn't match. 2 days later, the court scheduled a preliminary hearing. DeWitt would be required to appear. Meanwhile, Paxton's office, the same one prosecuting me, suddenly stopped returning calls. Clara filed a motion to compel transparency. The silence was telling. That week in court, Clara stood before the judge and requested that DeWitt be added to the witness list in my defense. The prosecution objected so loudly the room fell quiet. "I thought this trial was about truth," Clara said. "If so, let's hear it from every angle." The judge paused, then granted the motion. The next morning, someone vandalized Clara's car. "Liar" was scratched across the side in jagged letters. She didn't flinch. "This means we're close," she said. The day of DeWitt's hearing, the courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the hallway. Security was doubled. I sat in the back, trying to breathe evenly, as the man who'd hovered like a phantom finally stood under oath. He was calm, confident, smiling like a man at a cocktail party, until Clara began her questions. "Mr. DeWitt, were you present at the gala on March 14th? "Yes." "Do you recall how many guests arrived in your personal vehicle?" "I wasn't counting." "Do you recall giving your keys to Lucas Hartman?" His smile didn't move. "I did not." Clara nodded. "So when Mr. Hartman appeared on surveillance footage exiting your car, that was an error," he said. "Must have been a valet issue." She flipped open a folder and displayed a time-stamped valet log. "No record of that vehicle passing through the valet at any point that night. Would you like to revise your statement?" He shifted, just slightly. Paxton rose to object. "This line of questioning is irrelevant to the current charges," Clara cut in. "It is extremely relevant, because if Mr. DeWitt is lying under oath, it confirms the extent of deception surrounding this case." The judge allowed her to continue. Clara leaned closer. "Do you know where Lucas Hartman is, Mr. DeWitt?" "No," he said. A bead of sweat formed. "Did you pay for Mr. Hartman's legal representation after the crash?" Silence. "Did you instruct anyone to remove or alter footage that placed Mr. Hartman at the gala, still silent. Did you in any capacity suggest or support the framing of Jackson Rivera? The courtroom was frozen. Not a cough, not a whisper. DeWitt finally spoke, voice low. I think this deposition is over. Clara turned to the judge. I request the court issue a subpoena for full disclosure of all communications between Mr. DeWitt and the office of the district attorney. Paxton stood again, red-faced. This is outrageous. But the judge raised a hand. I'll allow it. Outside, cameras flashed. People chanted my name. My legs shook as I stepped down the courthouse steps, but Clara gripped my shoulder. This isn't the end, she said, but it's the first time they've had to answer. The cracks had become fissures. After DeWitt's disastrous deposition, Clara and I knew the clock had started ticking. Powerful men don't fall quietly, and they don't fall alone. They pull everyone down with them, or burn the rope before it reaches the ground. We needed more. One confession wasn't enough. One lie under oath wouldn't break a dynasty. We had to force the system to look at itself in the mirror. Clara made a list. Names, roles, connections. From security guards to judges, everyone who had touched my case, everyone who stood between truth and silence. Then, almost like fate, Lucas returned. A burner phone rang in Clara's drawer. She answered without a word. Her eyes widened. She nodded, scribbled an address, and left without telling me where she was going. When she came back 2 hours later, she was shaking. He's ready, she said. He wants protection, witness status. He's afraid they'll kill him. Will they? She didn't answer, just said, we meet tomorrow. Cameras ready. The next day, in a motel off the I-10, Lucas Hartman sat in front of a lens and spilled everything. He described the crash, how DeWitt handed him the keys, how the plan was to show up drunk, act harmless, blame someone else if things went wrong. He admitted DeWitt's team had scrubbed footage, paid off officers, threatened witnesses. He named names, judges, prosecutors, media consultants. He ended with a whisper, it was all about keeping the story clean. Jackson was just a convenient lie. We uploaded the full video to a secure server and sent it directly to the Department of Justice, the press, and the judge on my case. Within 24 hours, everything changed. DeWitt was arrested at LAX trying to board a flight to Zurich. The footage made national news. Evening anchors quoted Lucas word for word. Civil rights lawyers appeared on every channel, demanding reviews of past cases tied to DeWitt's network. The district attorney's office issued a statement claiming no knowledge of the corruption, but Clara had emails, real ones this time, and they were damning. She released them with timestamps, showing coordination between DeWitt's team and Paxton's office within days of the crash. That week, Paxton resigned, but the biggest moment came 3 days later in court. The judge reviewed the new evidence. With the media watching, she dropped all charges against me. Her words were short, but the meaning was thunderous. This case was built on manipulated evidence and prosecutorial misconduct. Mr. Rivera is fully acquitted. I didn't cheer. I didn't cry. I just stood there trying to remember how it felt to breathe without fear. Outside the courthouse, hundreds waited. They clapped. Some shouted my name. Others held signs with quotes from my video. One simply said, "We believe you." Clara stood beside me, unreadable as ever. I turned to her. "We did it." She shook her head. "No. We survived it. Now we fight the rest." The fallout was massive. An internal investigation swept through the district attorney's office. 3 staffers were indicted. 2 judges were suspended pending review. DeWitt's assets were frozen. His name, once a beacon of wealth, became a symbol of everything broken. But for me, justice wasn't just a courtroom verdict. It was silence returning to my nights. It was walking into a grocery store without eyes following me. It was knowing my name would no longer be whispered as a warning. Still, not everything healed. I'd lost months of my life. Friends who disappeared during the chaos never came back. Opportunities evaporated. Even now, people look at me and see a story, not a person. But I'm still standing. Clara didn't gloat. She didn't slow down. While others celebrated, she filed paperwork for a federal review of every case handled by the prosecutors connected to DeWitt. "You think this ends with you," she said. "This was just the first thread. There's a whole tapestry we need to unravel." I offered to help, not because I owed her, but because I owed myself. She didn't hesitate. "Then let's get to work." One morning, a week after my acquittal, a letter arrived, no return address. Inside, a copy of the original guest list from the gala, uncensored, unaltered, and one name highlighted in red ink, Clara Mendoza. I showed it to her. She stared at it for a long time. "They wanted me in that room," she said softly. "They planned this long before the crash." "Why?" She folded the paper carefully. "Because I already knew too much." I didn't ask more. Some truths take time to ripen. All I knew was this: the untouchables had finally been touched, and the world had watched it happen in real time. Freedom didn't come with fireworks, it came with silence. For the first time in months, I woke up and didn't feel hunted. The sun still rose, cars still passed on the street, but inside me, something had shifted, something quiet and permanent. I wasn't the same man who got into that Toyota all those months ago. People started reaching out, strangers mostly, survivors of injustice, people who saw in my case a reflection of their own battles. One woman said her son had been jailed for a crime he didn't commit. Another told me she'd been silenced by her company after reporting abuse. Their stories stayed with me. Clara, meanwhile, remained impossible to read. She avoided interviews, declined invitations to panels, and turned down every media outlet that begged for an exclusive. "They want a headline," she told me. "I want a reckoning." She focused instead on her work. Quietly, she built legal challenges, launched motions, opened cases for review. One by one, the dominoes we'd shaken began to fall. Eventually, the governor ordered an audit of judicial appointments over the last decade. That wasn't us directly, but the pressure we'd created had shifted the ground beneath everyone's feet. And I began to speak, not as a victim, not even as an activist, just as someone who knew how it felt to be invisible and then weaponized as someone else's lie. I spoke at community colleges. I talked to law students. I joined panels about judicial reform, though I still hated microphones. Each time I told my story, I watched faces change, not in pity, but in recognition. Then one morning I received a letter. No name, no return address, just a clean white envelope and a single sheet of paper. It read, "You fought louder than we planned. She was right about you." There was no signature, no explanation. I showed it to Clara. She studied it for a long moment. "They're still watching," she said. "Are you worried?" She folded the note. "Not yet." Weeks passed. I returned to part-time work. I took walks without checking over my shoulder. Life resumed, but never as it was. Then, out of nowhere, Clara called me. "Don't say no," she said. "Just dress like you belong and meet me in Koreatown tonight." I didn't ask questions. I put on a blazer, combed my hair, and arrived at a quiet building near Wilshire. The doorman greeted her by name. When he saw me, he nodded. "Welcome back, Mr. Rivera." Back. Inside, the air was thick with quiet power. Not wealth, not fame. Something else. Something older. Clara led me to a small private room with a long table. At the head sat a woman in her 60s, silver-haired, eyes sharp as glass. Around her 6 others, lawyers, journalists, ex-judges. People who had all in some way paid a price for going against the machine. Clara introduced me without fanfare. "This is Jackson," she said. "You've seen his story. He's the reason we're doing this." The woman at the head of the table nodded once. "We've watched you," she said. "You didn't break, that matters." Then she turned to Clara. "He's ready." "Ready for what?" I asked. Clara smiled. Not the cold smirk she wore in court, but something softer, something real. To help us build what they never saw coming. Over the next hour, they explained. A coalition, not a firm, not a movement, a force. Hidden in plain sight, designed to protect whistleblowers, investigate judicial corruption, and fight back where others failed. They weren't asking me to lead. They were asking me to be part of it. To tell your story when needed, the silver-haired woman said, to speak for those who can't. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't revenge, it was the long war. I said yes. That night, Clara and I walked out into the city. The wind was warm, the sky was clear. You never told me why you took my case, I said. She glanced sideways. Because I saw them try that trick before, years ago. I couldn't stop it then. And me? You were the first person who said no, and meant it. We stood in silence. I'd always thought survival meant escape, but maybe it also meant staying, building something stronger from the ashes. What they didn't expect was that I'd still be standing, that I'd learn to speak, that I'd turn their lie into a movement. But here I was, still here, still rising. 6 months later, my name was printed on a list, not buried, not forgotten, not framed, invited. It was a conference in San Francisco, closed door, private, invitation only. Judges, lawyers, policymakers, a few select survivors of legal failure, and me. I arrived alone, wearing a suit that still felt strange on my shoulders. At the check-in table, a woman scanned the list and smiled. "Mr. Rivera," she said, "we've been expecting you." The words hit deeper than I imagined. Inside, the room buzzed with quiet tension, not fear but purpose. Clara was already there, standing near a panel display, speaking to someone in low tones. When she saw me, she nodded, not warm, not distant, a signal. We weren't just guests. We were part of it now. The panel began, and the moderator introduced me last. A man whose case revealed more than corruption. It revealed complacency, whose silence was weaponized, and whose refusal to surrender reminded us what justice is supposed to mean. I stepped onto the stage. The lights didn't blind me this time. My voice didn't shake. "I didn't come here to tell a story," I began. "I came here to remind you that the people we fail don't vanish. We carry the damage, and some of us fight back, not because we want revenge, but because no one should live what we did." The applause was short, quiet, the kind that matters. Afterward, people approached. Lawyers thanked me. Journalists asked for time, but one man said nothing, just shook my hand, his eyes glassy with memory. Later, Clara found me outside on the balcony. "Not bad for a guy who used to flinch when his phone rang," she said. I laughed. "I still flinch. I just don't run anymore." She leaned against the railing. "You know this isn't over." "I know." She handed me a folder. "New case," she said. "Different city. Same game. They want you on the first call." "Why me?" She looked at me then, really looked. "Because your name opens doors now, and because you never asked for this, but you owned it anyway." I opened the folder, read the first page. A teenage boy wrongly accused. No lawyer willing to touch the case. I closed it. I'm in. In the weeks that followed, I worked quietly behind the scenes. I helped prepare affidavits, built timelines, connected people who didn't know they were on the same side. I didn't need a title. I didn't want one. What mattered was momentum, and it was building. Every so often I'd get messages, notes from strangers who saw the video, read the articles, remembered my name. Some just said thank you. Others asked how to fight back. I answered every single one. Then one evening, Clara invited me to something different. A dinner, small, private. She wouldn't say where. When I arrived, I realized it was the house, the mansion, the one from the gala. No red carpet, no velvet rope, just a steel gate, unlocked. I stepped inside. The air was still rich with memory. Clara met me near the staircase. "Why here?" I asked. "Because it's ours now," she said. "Civil seizure, evidence in multiple trials. They didn't want it back, so we claimed it." "We?" she smiled. "The foundation. You're co-founder now, by the way." I blinked. "Seriously?" She nodded. "You earned it." We sat in the same room where Lucas had laughed, where lies had been passed like drinks. But this time the names on the list were different. Advocates, defenders, believers. People who had once been forgotten, now remembered by choice. As I raised my glass to toast, I looked around and realized something I hadn't felt in a long time. I belonged. I had spent so long trying to prove I was worth saving. Now I understood. I was never the mistake. I was the alarm that forced the house to wake. Later that night, as people drifted out and silence returned, Clara walked me to the door. "You know," I said, "when this all started, I thought it would end with someone else's decision. A judge, a jury, you." She looked at me. "And now? I know it ends when I say it does." She reached into her pocket and handed me a card. On it, a QR code. One word beneath it, next. "What is it?" I asked. She grinned. "The next one who thought they were safe." I turned the card over. My name was printed on the back. For the first time, it didn't scare me, because this time I was ready. If you've made it this far, you know the power of one voice. Subscribe for more stories where truth fights back. Click the video on screen to discover the next unbelievable case Clara took on